Hello everybody, this is your student Facebook meteorologist Sean Bagden here, and we're going to be talking about the potential for significant rainfall in the valleys and significant snowfall, at least in the White Mountains of New Hampshire and potentially up in the Sugarloaf area of Maine up here and into Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. Otherwise, looks like a general coating to a couple of inches up here along the Green Mountain spine. Although temperatures are very marginal, so we could end up seeing a more significant snowfall of 4 inches plus if ingredients do come together across Vermont. But we are right on that precipitation axis here, where we're right on the edge of that heavier precipitation and the lighter precipitation. New Hampshire will be well entrenched in this cold air and heavy precipitation, leading to that very high chance of significant snowfall, especially over the presidential range there and any of those peaks above 4,000 feet. So here we go. We're going to run through the time here. This is our upper level pattern, and then we'll break it down to more specifics as we go through this video here. We can clearly see right here, this is our piece of energy just coming on shore right now around this Washington coastline here. This is the energy that is going to be causing this trough right here to dig deep down into the mid-Atlantic region and start cyclogenesis, or the formation of a low pressure system right off the New Jersey coastline here. And models have been trending weaker with this feature, but it really doesn't matter because we do have this strong axis of moisture getting funneled up out in front of this frontal boundary from the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean area here. And that getting thrown into a very cold air mass brought to you by a negatively tilted trough will lead to cold air getting pulled in from Canada, allowing for some of this precipitation to turn over to snow at the mountain peaks. So we'll show you this in real time here. Here we go. We can see this bowl structure starting to develop here. This is our trough axis starting to develop. And as this piece of energy that we just showed you from Washington starts to move into the base of this trough, we'll see it start to kind of get a little more skinny. The axis will be a little less broad. It'll begin to be a little more skinny, and this energy will be more concentrated toward the base of the trough, which leads to a higher chance of cyclogenesis, or the formation of a low pressure developing, especially when you get that high concentration of jet energy and wind energy right here at the base of the trough. We'll show you how this happens right here. Yeah, and here we go. We can see how this axis of the jet really starts to tighten up here. Earlier it was taking up pretty much a large majority of the eastern 2/3 of the United States. Now it's just taking up the Great Lakes region, and it's really starting to dig down into the mid-Atlantic here. And we're starting to get this jet streak accelerating right at the base of this trough here, which is exactly what we want to see when we're looking for a negatively tilted trough that's going to throw all this moisture stuck out over the Atlantic into New England. That is why we are so good at getting prolific snowstorms up this way, because of these negatively tilted troughs tilting in this Atlantic moisture here. And we can see that happening very clearly here. Trough axis goes negative like this, a little more east to west oriented than north to south or west to east. And we can clearly see this big area of energy, strong energy here across New Jersey, and generally right out in front of that is where we see our cyclogenesis. So right here we'd be seeing a developing area of low pressure right near southeastern Massachusetts and tracking into the Gulf of Maine as we follow the streamlines here. And the thing to keep in mind is as these winds, surface winds, are being bent at a 90-degree angle to the winds at 500 millibars here. So it's going to be perpendicular to these. So we can see our streamlines 90 degrees to that would be a path like this. And that's where the path our moisture is going to be taking. And generally, right inside of this trough axis is where a cold pocket of air aloft likes to reside. So any moisture that can get sucked into this area within this trough axis here, especially this really healthy area, this is where that cold air is bottled up. And that is where we can get those snow levels down to probably 2,000, 2,500 feet in the heaviest bands. That's probably where we can see flakes mixing down to. So that means pretty much from the Cog Railway up to Mount Washington, once this cold pocket aloft arrives, will be all snow. And that also is the same thing for here across Vermont and to some extent the Adirondacks. But the forcing really won't be there to get much in the way of precipitation across the Adirondacks. And temperatures will be a little too warm because of the lack of the presence of this cold pocket aloft for northern Maine. But New Hampshire will be in the sweet spot here with the perfect amount of forcing and the perfect amount of cold air in place for a significant high elevation snowstorm here. And bands of heavy rainfall will be occurring out in front of this axis of very cold air aloft stuck in this trough axis. So right here where this energy tracks, it's going to be tracking off to the northeast. So anywhere in this area right here, so that's looking like eastern Vermont, all of New Hampshire, and into parts of, or a large majority of western Maine there, and even parts of western Mass and most of Connecticut will get in on this heavy banded rainfall. Looking at amounts here, we are probably seeing, let's zoom this in a little bit. We'll be bringing that trough axis in, and we're looking at amounts right here once we zoom this in real quick. Rainfall amounts will be on the verge of about 1.5 inches in these heavy banding features along this area of energy here, with some areas even getting up into Maine here as this energy really starts to strengthen. Could see up to 2.5 inches of rain. More mountainous areas, maybe even a little more than that, pushing the 3-inch mark, which could lead to rapid rises on area rivers. But given the dry conditions, not expecting too much in the way of flooding, maybe minor flooding across the areas that have seen recent heavy rains. But yet again, here's the reason why we're not expecting much in the way of snow across New York mountains as well as rainfall. We have this sharp area of dry air that's really cutting off our precipitation amounts across upstate New York. And if these trends continue, these further east trends continue, Vermont will likely be taken out of that as well. But again, New Hampshire is right in that sweet spot where about 1.5 to 2 inches of precipitation could fall. We'll just put that precipitation word in there for you skiers and riders out there. But again, here's our rainfall amounts. Let's go to the upper level temperature. This is where skiers will start to get a little bit excited. Hold on here. Okay. Here's our temperature right at about 4,500 feet. Hold on. There we go. And so this is precipitation moves in Friday night into Saturday morning, and we can see right at this time, this is when the heaviest precipitation begins, and these are temperatures in Celsius right at the mountaintops. So we can see precipitation will start as snow here Maybe a little onset of rain, but for the most part, peaks above 3,500 feet in Vermont will start as snow. Given what we're seeing here with these temperatures just slightly below freezing at the 4,500 foot contour right here. New Hampshire will take a little more time to get into this, but at this time, Mount Washington's probably snowing because it is above this elevation right here, and these temperatures are just crashing along this boundary. That is why we're going to see such heavy precipitation falling right here on that front leading edge of that 0-degree contour, because this sharp contrast in temperatures is really going to be causing a significant amount of lift to be occurring right in this zone right here. And that's going to be what causes this heavy snowfall and heavy rainfall to be happening across western Maine, large portion of New Hampshire, into central and western Mass, and central and western Connecticut here. Just a strong area of convergence with rapidly decreasing temperatures. And you can see this boundary hugs this area that I just mentioned for several hours here. These are 6-hour timestamps, and this heavy precipitation and cold temperatures aloft continues for, look at this, probably 6, 12, 18, 24, 36 hours before this temperature gradient starts to weaken and move on out, and that cold pocket gets replaced by warming air on return flow from the south and west here. But looks like a good 24-hour period of very heavy precipitation occurring right in the zone that I'm circling right here. And again, with these temperatures so close to freezing, if not slightly below freezing, across the Green Mountains of Vermont and definitely the White Mountains of New Hampshire, could definitely see the chance at a couple of inches of snow here across Vermont, and several inches, if not talking feet, across the White Mountains and Presidentials of New Hampshire here, given what we are seeing. Let's bring in some soundings here. We'll bring in the ECMWF. This is the European model that we were just looking at. Oh, we can't get soundings on that. Let me try to get them on the high res here. Okay, we can do this. This is good. Hold on, we'll get precip type. And generally these precip type maps right here are very, we'll call it deceiving to look at in terms of the what the actual precipitation type ends up being, because it doesn't really account for elevation too well, especially with the grid spacing that generally is induced in these models right here. So you generally have to look at soundings like we're about to do to make that determination yourself. So we'll go into Saturday morning, and we can see Euro has low pressure developing here. This is 2 a.m. on Saturday, and we can see mostly rain is in place. Banded rain features are in place here across that area I was talking about before. That heavy rain and high elevation snowfall will be possible. So we'll take a sounding right here at Mount Washington, and we'll have a look at precipitation type briefly and the profile of the atmosphere as the system starts to get itself underway. Alright, so here we go. Mount Washington usually exists around your 800 millibar level, which is right about in here. So it's right at the freezing point at this point in time. Likely going to be snow given this profile, and even snow down to that 4,500 to 4,000 foot band is definitely possible, given this area of dry pocket of air here in the low levels. Could definitely see some snow in those heavier bands getting down to the surface here. Mount Washington definitely seeing snow throughout the entirety of this event here. It was very cold valley rain. We have very saturated profile here, leading to high P-watt values, which means the atmosphere will be very efficient at making precipitation and rainfall. Snowfall ratios on Mount Washington and higher elevations here in these early season events are generally not too high because we don't have very isothermal conditions this time of year within these storms, which means the temperature stays very similar with height because we generally need very cold pockets of air aloft to create these snowstorms at high elevation this time of year, which means those steeper lapse rates and a less deep, I guess you could call it, zone of favorable growth for those dendrites, which is right in this small area right here. Would definitely prefer that to be a much deeper region, but we get what we can this time of year. Likely going to be that 8-to-1 ratio kind of snow, so a little bit gloppy. But then here we go again. We're even looking at the surface turning over to snow with a profile like this. At what time? This is right around the morning, 8 a.m. on Saturday morning across central and northern New Hampshire, likely turning to snow and very heavy wet snow here with this profile. This is perfect for very heavy snowfall rates, especially since this is happening just before sunrise. Would not be surprised to see this accumulating couple inches an hour at least here right before the sun rises, and you start to get that melting from that sun angle at this time of year. But definitely going to be some significant precipitation amounts across these areas. I do agree with the National Weather Service snowfall maps. We will bring those up in a little bit here. And then you can see as northwesterly flow takes hold into the afternoon hours on Saturday, drying starts in the low levels here, but looks like the cloud deck will remain relatively thick here across the area, likely producing just some remaining light snows across the white and green mountains of Vermont and New Hampshire. And this snow will likely be reaching the surface as snow. So that's where we're going to leave that technical talk at. Again, you can see snow starts to mix in here across the White Mountains on this next frame, but I think we do see it for the majority of the event across these White Mountains of New Hampshire here, and even into Vermont. Actually, here we go. We'll bring up a sounding over Mount Mansfield and Stowe Mountain Resort, and we can clearly see right here that this is going to be a snow sounding, probably even in the heavier precipitation rates, all the way down to the surface at Stowe Mountain Resort here at the base of the lifts, and all the way up into the top of Mount Mansfield here. So probably top to bottom snow on the Green Mountains here, especially the northern greens up near Jay Peak, although precipitation amounts are in question due to that dry air getting blocked up on the backside of the system here because of that area of high pressure that's going to be really funneling in that dry air. But it's helping us on the whites get our first significant snowfall of the season, likely top to bottom snowfall on Mount Washington before turning to a primarily rain event from the Cog Railway Station down to the ocean floors there. And probably snowfall elevations at their lowest will get down to around 1,500 feet area wide, but no significant snowfall accumulations until you get above that 3,800 foot band, I would say, across the Green Mountains of Vermont and this area right here across the White Mountains of New Hampshire. That seems like a pretty reasonable forecast in my eyes. And when we're talking about significant snowfall accumulations, we'll show you the National Weather Service forecast maps for this. We're going to start out with National Weather Service Burlington, and we'll break down our snowfall amounts mountain by mountain here. Generally in pretty good agreement with the National Weather Service forecast maps right here. Although I do think this is a little bit high on Whiteface and Mount Marcy here, showing that 12 to 18 inch, or what is that? No, sorry, that's an 8 to 12 inch band right here, although I do think that is a bit high, as only half an inch of precipitation is expected to fall here. I'm thinking more on the 2-inch range area wide up here, with not much in the way of snowfall, say in this area that it has a dusting of snow. I think it just remains about a 2 to 4 inch snowfall here, widespread across the elevations above, I'd say, 2,500 feet. Oops, sorry everybody. Oh, let me get that back real quick. Here we go. And then I'm pretty happy with these totals across, say, Killington. What is this? This is Mad River and Sugarbush, Jay Peak, and Stowe Mountain Resort right here. And Burke, I believe that is, in Belvedere. I think these mountains do have a shot at seeing 4 to 6 inches of snow, especially above 3,500 feet. Make that 3,800 feet, so this is just above the top of the lift at Stowe. I think you have a shot at 4 to 6 inches, anywhere from the lift tops and down, likely seeing that 4 inches or less, and then tapering down to below an inch once you hit that 2,000 foot band there. Heading over to Gray, Maine, I believe it's Gry. We'll see. Nope, that is not Gray, Maine. We'll have to go back to the main site here. There we go. Okay, here's our big forecast. This is going to determine whether or not people go skiing on the Cog Railway on Mount Washington this weekend. Here we go. And we're looking at snowfall forecasts pretty high right here, especially across the Sugarloaf area of Maine into Pittsburgh, New Hampshire, and down into the White Mountain Spine, with the top of Mount Washington here expected to get 12 to 18 inches of wind-blown blizzard snow. That'll likely be very thick and gloppy. It'll stick right onto those rocks. But then a widespread 8 to 12 inches of snow this weekend expected, above that 4,000 foot band of the White Mountains here. Likely seeing above 6 inches above 4,000 feet in the White Mountains. Below that, to the valleys, expecting to see, well, we'll call it the high valleys. So we're talking Crawford Notch here and near Cannon on 93. We'll be expecting snowfall totals down there to be generally 1 to 2 inches, and then below that near 0 as we head toward Freiburg and Lewiston. And given the current setup, would not put it past this event to get on this high range right here, which is generally actually what they're forecasting right now, but would not be surprised to see their forecast totals increase a little bit for the White Mountains, just given what I'm seeing and those very saturated profiles and heavy snowfall rates being expected during the overnight hours, which will limit melting But definitely looks like a day that you may want to go out and get on the boards for the first day of the year, especially if you live anywhere near the Cog Railway. Would highly recommend getting out onto the Cog Railway for a few turns on Saturday morning, and maybe even the upper part of Cannon there wouldn't be too bad, especially if you go down that grassy trail near the tram line there. Don't think skiing is going to be much of a possibility in the northern Vermont mountains if the current trends continue. I do see those totals being knocked down just because that dry air getting entrained to the low levels may decrease our overall precipitation amounts, not even just talking rain. But again, final breakdown expecting, hold on, we will be expecting generally. Oh, this is a different run here. Okay, we'll keep this up though. We're generally expecting 1.5 to 2 inches of rain for western Maine, all of New Hampshire, down into central and western Mass, and most of Connecticut. And then as we move off to the east, expecting rapidly decreasing amounts. I believe the Champlain Valley will be around that half-inch barrier, with central Vermont currently being in the 1-inch band, and then rapidly decreasing amounts as we head off into New York, likely nearing 0 as we head into the St. Lawrence Valley here, and then slightly lesser amounts near the coastline as we're expecting slightly less convergence, as it looks like the main boundary will remain inland across the Whites, interior Maine, and let's say Franklin, Hampshire County, and Mass, and down into central and western Connecticut here. So that is your latest on the snow and rainfall expected with the system. If you have any questions, please leave them below. And we'll likely have another live stream coming up before we do any snow live streams or any of that variety of live stream. Yeah, that's all we have. Have a good day, everybody.